Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We had some introductions, but they're not here right now of some people who've reached out to us, which we had mentioned previously when we had done our ODY trail work session. And those individuals were represented from Navajo Nation Climate Change, which I think was from Fish and Wildlife. And then Sylvia Billy from Special Diabetes Project, who was actually one of the first organizations to back this project when we first applied with National Park Service. And then the last individual was Mike Witt. He was with the Katina Foundation, which is a a funder for youth projects and community-based projects. And so hopefully if they're joining, they can meet the team. And then we could introduce everybody from our organization. But hopefully whenever they come in, then we'll just take a pause and then introduce them and orient them to everybody. I know previously we had shared our overview map of the system. Which you'll see right here. So hopefully when they come on, I know that they're each familiar with the project, but one of the things that we've done since we last met was do a trail walk with Mr. Perry, Jimmy, and then Attila, and then Latasha and Sheldon of the ODY trail. And based off of that, and I'll share the map here in a second, we figured out where we're gonna, start our project. And so you see right here, a little modification previously is isolated right here where our trail started for this upper trail. But we since integrated this with ODY just because this is the best plot of land to begin development. So hopefully Virginia and Jimmy will be able to join us here in a second or at some point. But we've since expanded the section, which you'll see here, which adds another element to this Hashlishne trail. But as you can see, it's kind of separated, and you'll see the overview of everything. We just have this slight alteration right now. So as mentioned, we did go out there, Sheldon, Latasha, Attila, Jimmy, and Leonard, and we updated the ODY trail to include certain types of interventions and projects which can be made up of if we're going to be using youth employment over the summer and then into the future, hopefully once we get notice on some grant funds that we had applied for. But you could see here on the screen that I'm sharing, this is an update of what we had done with the ODY trail produced by Attila. But it's basically a 0.94 mile loop that begins here in ODY. We wanted to take advantage of the location, it being that they're putting up a wellness center here that's going to have things like classroom space, but also cooking space to learn about healthy cooking options. And then the wellness center is beyond them. So I know Mr. Sosi had mentioned that they wanted to possibly have like a gateway or main place people could park to access the trail network. And he mentioned this would be kind of an ideal location given Route 9 is up here. And then intersecting down here is 371. So if people were to come, they could park at the wellness center and then get on our trail network. So just an overview for anyone who didn't attend that session. Where we started was up here at ODY. So let me go ahead and zoom in. And these are conversations, hopefully once I get back on the agenda with Land Board and we're able to talk with Mr. DeGroat, is learning about right-of-ways because it starts within the parking lot of ODY. And then the very first suggestion we had talked about was that road. And we're talking about for long-term solutions, possibly putting in a speed table to reduce the speed of traffic coming through the area of buses and cars, and to also possibly widen it. And I know that Leonard was mentioning how that's already kind of an initiative that's being taken place where they're going to widen this road. But if we could put in a speed table, we're hoping it will slow traffic for whenever people are crossing the parking area to get to the recreation. As part of this, we're talking about having some mitigations and putting up a retaining wall south of the road, just because we had noticed there was a lot of overflow of sediment and drainage. So setting up things like swales and retaining walls will hopefully keep this part clear. But the idea was to use existing sidewalk to help connect towards where our real gateway is, which is down over here. But using existing infrastructure, I think, is an appeal towards our integrating that into our system, because it allows us to use what's already existing there, and we didn't want to scar the area even more. So basically that trail follows sidewalk. We had also mentioned this kind of no man's land over here. So we're also going to have to figure out the designation right here. I know in the past we were talking about getting it repurposed, the chapter, and then reallocated possibly to ODY or Navajo Nation, because this area is kind of that, I think it's McKinley County Schools, it's possibly theirs. Nobody really knows. So eventually we're going to have to get that figured out once we develop this area. But from this, why we had kind of also went around the exterior of this pathway was that there is a lot of vehicle traffic coming through here with the softball field, and then also the courts. And oftentimes, we're saying we don't want cars crossing over and cutting up our trail system. So this was all kind of designated no development. That's why we went on the outside. And then eventually, once you cross over that entryway from the sidewalk, is when you're greeted with that gateway. So we're talking just southeast of the courts, which again, we had discussions about developing this area, hopefully with ODY, of getting their skate park going, or maybe doing the basketball courts again, or maybe even if we were to go after some funds, doing the pump track after we get all of the risk management stuff squared away. But just southeast of there is where we had identified a trail gateway, which would have the signage, the maps, the rules, and then the directions of how you could access the upper or lower on trail or stay here on the ODY, which is kind of like, maybe if you're talking about upper and lower, this is like the beginners on the ODY trail. And I know we were talking about in the past about using youth, and if we're going to get this going, where do you start, or where would we start? And I think where we kind of identified it is this area right here. So if they were just to be focused under the instruction of Attila or the supervisors that Jimmy and crew had set up, here you could do work on signage. That could be a project for however many weeks. We're talking about rehabilitating this area because there was a lot of just crisscrossing pathways, which would involve transplanting vegetation for new sections, which could be a project, but then also rerouting that trail because we had noticed a lot of the runoff from water. So how do we kind of veer that to construct a new segment, but also avoiding the utility lines that we had talked about on running parallel with the road here. And I think it stopped at a certain point is where they're mainly getting to the boxes. And so that's why we were talking about having barriers put up. And you'll see the designations over here as well. I'm sorry, I didn't allude to this, but the black indicates motor vehicle barricade. In certain areas, they have that power line. But then we also identify where people were backing up into here and taking rocks. I think that's Caitlin and her family, because they live down here. It's probably Mary. But we were talking about this area, having that blocked off, and then veered away from all of that stuff. And then possibly leaving it open for ATVs as well if you go outside this barricade. because we didn't want to shut anybody off, and it's obviously in use. So that was kind of the idea of kind of bringing this trail outside of that, and then constructing new pathways. And within our clean and beautiful programs, we did put in requests for crusher fine surfacing, and then for natural material surfacing, which again could be focused in this area, so it feels like you're kind of stepping onto the trail system, which again could be utilized to put the youth to work on something simple. But within that intervention, is really about veering out, but then also being aware of that watershed and then those that use it for ATV. But I think getting to a point where we had mentioned having a choke point, so no vehicles could get up beyond this point. And I know that the trail gets a little bit more narrow. So this is where Latasha and Sheldon were kind of walking off to the side. And obviously that's not something that we want, because it kind of gets rid of the edge of it. So we're talking about having a reverse grade dips to adjust the drainage, but then also widening it to 6 feet. So you could have that side by side walking here, getting down towards the bottom of the area. But as you notice, there's a lot of different drainage that comes through here. One of the things that we'll talk about once we get up here is, kind of diverging it. So it kind of goes, and I think around that choke point, there was a sewer drain that gets to the road. So, being aware of that type of stuff. Towards the bottom, this would be where we connect within the trail system. So it goes back over to Kiani Trail by way of NTU. So having signage there and then veering it back up. Before you saw, this was kind of a lot of different paths going up, but it was really steep, as much as this, walking up it. So what we had done was we veered out that trail, probably about another 20 yards, that kind of widened it and then made that ascension a little bit more manageable, which included narrowing it from the 6 foot to about 3 to 4 width. But then using retaining walls and other measures to help prevent a lot of that drainage and water that's been following those trails that were built over time. And then again, using some rehabilitation work with students, possibly eventually with natural heritage, or I'm sorry, and I forget, Chaz Robles group, where we could do some rehabilitation, closing road segments, and then kind of veering people off to this path, which is a little bit more accessible. And then as you go up, just realigning areas for grades that are a little bit too steep, but then also that water runoff that we were talking about, which eventually gets up to this point where you have the second sign, or there's one down here as well, but this connects us to the lower and upper trail from Hashklishna Trail. And then so it comes back up here and then finishes out where we're talking about with the school. So that was the trail, the walk that we had done. Did I miss anything? I don't want to talk too much. Leonard or Latasha or Sheldon, I know you guys were all there.
I just have a question, Daniel.
Yes.
Did Reggie or Jimmy say anything about the baseball field, the traffic, that development for the, what was it, tennis court, basketball courts? Did they say anything definite about future development? Like phase 1, phase 2, or anything?
I think they were in the plans, but they were just kind of being avoided because of the risk management. That's why they were still locking up those gates and why they didn't have anything to do with that skate park. But if we start planning for that and coming up, helping them with those rules and regulations and things that cover liability in regards to how they're maintained, I think that's something that we could possibly lend our help with. I know that with the baseball, they were talking about possibly doing additional parking up here to further accommodate that wellness center. But if not, I know within the Clean and Beautiful grant program, one of the things they had mentioned was that these dugouts over here are always getting defaced. So we're talking about maybe doing a mural project on the back of them that relate to the trail system. So if that's something that gets approved with what we requested, that could be a small step towards, getting that. But I was hoping they'd be on the call today, which I don't see them. But something we could definitely ask them next time.
Yeah, because when I go there, when I see people driving in and out, it's like disorganized. The
Mhm.
traffic, it's not really, which way people should go, where they should park. It's kind of like you're on your own type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, that's something that we could talk about with them. Maybe doing another in-depth session about their overall plans and how things are developing, because they're going to relate one way or another to this trail system. We don't want to just have it read and make it seem like it's a thing we want to avoid. If we make it inclusive, that encourages different types of recreation around this trail system, which I think is an important. But I don't want to speak on behalf of Jimmy or Virginia. I think that's a discussion we have to have when they're here.
Daniel, this is Sheldon. I think also there was, I don't know if you talked about this or not, but the discussion of the surfacing that was mentioned briefly at the beginning of our walk. I know Jimmy was talking about some surfacing areas, and Attila just kind of explained more in detail what it entails when you're doing surfacing, like putting in the small gravel, like you should have a base layer on the bottom. So I think Jimmy just had the idea of maybe just putting gravel on there and not really doing it thoroughly as the way Attila had discussed it in depth.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the section right here. Everybody that we're talking about, like I was saying, we wanted to have an area where we feel like we're stepping into an actual trail system, even though we want to keep it as natural as possible, was using a lot of those strategies that Sheldon was talking about. And I think that's one of the projects or tasks we can do once ODY has their youth employment going. And even if we're working with the chapter on something small that doesn't require too much physical labor, is that we could just talk about how do you do do a remediation for a certain section of it, putting in crusher fine or those different strategies. And that's one of the things that we had put in as a match for the Clean and Beautiful, is a matching grant. And Attila had already recommended or volunteered to give so many workshops. I think surfacing would be a good one. Safety with tools and what you use would be another. And then 3 was maybe the signage or something like that. But that's something we could decide. But that's where that focus was going to be, I believe. So little things like that is how we're gonna start with and engaging the youth. And maybe if I go back towards go back to the agenda. Did that address what you're asking, Sheldon?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Cool. So here's the map. We went over these. We talked about certain projects, and I think that's Attila couldn't make it today because he's on his vacation. But he had we had kind of worked up some projects about, I think if we were to look at that map, and talked about widening it 3 to 4 feet, putting in crusher fine. We should be able to come up with exactly how much of this is needed. Even if we were to look at the trailhead, how we're discussing how many people will be working on that. I know that we're talking about having 3 at least to start that are high school students and a college student. How many hours is that going to require of each of them? Projects, equipment. And I think that's going to be in some of our asks that we're going to be talking about here in a second. So before we close up on this, was there anything else? One of the things I did share with everybody was talking about get out of this. Was having a job description in place. So last or 2 weeks ago, I did email this out for everybody. This is just the supervisor position, but it talks about what it's about, what will there be their job duties and responsibilities, includes things like supervision, maintaining a safe place, kind of general at first, but then it gets down to a little bit more specific types of work. These were at the suggestion of Attila, again, installing water bars to redirect water runoff, installing rock aprons to slow water flow. Things like this are what I think we could do the workshops on. But then also kind of getting into the nitty gritty of installing stuff. And then talking about certain projects. So if it were to help with our launch of the rodeo, or if we were to integrate Navajo Nation climate change, what's a presentation that we could possibly do on water runoff? I think there was another thing that we could add to this, and I think it was at the suggestion of Sheldon and PRC, was even presenting on the experience once complete, inviting families in, talking about what they worked on. Because how we were discussing at the work session at ODY, and I did send out that video for everyone. I know it's kind of hard to hear because we're outdoors, but we had talked about, we want to use this summer youth as not only an opportunity to, put these kids to work learning about trail development, but then also developing presentation skills, talking about planning for purposes of them learning more than just having a summer employment. They're kind of growing professionally, but then also expanding involvement within this project to more of our community partners as well. So we did pass this out. I'll go ahead and email it and then upload it to our Google Drive. But we were talking about doing that for the summer youth program. And then also having specific types of projects eventually. And this is, again, something we're going to have to hammer out with Jimmy and Virginia, and hopefully the chapter as well, is going after projects that, relate outside of, again, just developing the trails. And I think encouraging them to be hands-on, doing surveys, going along and talking with people, developing communications skills, interviewing parents, grandparents, people of the community, doing things like at storytelling, doing interviews, collecting stories and backgrounds, doing walk audits. I know that, PRC does walkability and places assessments. This could definitely align with this. And then planning for the bike rodeo, public art. But these were other things that we had mentioned, possibly being projects that related outside of just doing the trail work. And how we were talking about splitting it up was maybe doing in the mornings outdoor work, doing trail development, then afternoons coming back and putting together presentation or learning about interviewing, things like that. Because 8 hours outside in the sun is a lot, so we wanted to split that up for that purpose.
Daniel,
Yes.
there's an email that just came in from Mike Wright from Katina Foundation. I don't know if they were trying to get on the Zoom call, but it sounds like they were waiting and they're just gonna hang up. It says down the email.
Oh no. Okay, let me try to figure out what's going on. They're on the phone. I guess they were calling in, but it's not linking them to the meeting. I didn't get any messages either about allowing anybody to get into the meeting. Do you know why they might be locked out? Leonard, you call in. How do you get to this meeting?
Put in the link.
Let me try sending it to them again. I'll email the link.
Just call in, then use PIN numbers.
Hmm. Did you call the number at the top underneath Google Meet, Leonard, or one of the bottom ones? I'm thinking maybe they're in a,
They might be trying to get in by the top portion.
you got to get in by the bottom.
Yeah, I use the bottom.
Houston?
Houston, we have a problem.
I mean, is Houston the one that you connect to?
Yeah.
Okay, let me send
San
that.
Jose, Daniel.
Oh, San Jose.
It's the San Jose number.
Okay. Try that one. I think they're, he responded to us. Okay, sorry about that. And thanks guys for clarifying that. We'll see if they hop on here. Let me go back to the agenda.
So Daniel, this is
Yes.
Sally. I just wanted to extend the invitation again that if Attila wants to use the Fisher Trail in Cuba or the Park Trail, either one is paved, one is just cleared for walking. He helped with the design, and the students from the summer program from the Youth Corps, actually from 2 or 3 different, one, the Vista and Youth Corps and everything, have both helped build those trails and maintain them. And if you want to do a field trip and come over, I know it's really hot right now, but it's supposed to cool off in sometime, that's an option, and we'd be glad to host it and show them. And what I'm thinking is that Attila could say, this is how you do a water bar, and this is how you do a place to avoid the erosion, and here's how you do a switchback, and here's how you measure the trail, and it's already complete and in use. I'm not pushing that, I'm just offering it. You're invited to do that. It might be fun for the kids, and then we could go out to the fairgrounds, which is a nice venue for if you want to talk about it afterwards and have lunch or something like that. And I think we could probably host some kind of lunch. You may have already heard this because I think that we talked about it on our meeting, and Sheldon and Latasha may have mentioned it, but I just want to make that invitation open again, and whenever it's available to you. They've gone through, or I should say we, because I live there too, but a lot of stages, a lot of the same kind of things that Attila talks about. The same, in fact, right now, we went on National Trails Day, we were doing cleanup at all the trailheads, and the sign by the kiosk by the school trail has been destroyed. We're going to have to replace the whole structure. And the one by Fisher Trail, the sun has eroded it, and we're going to need to get a new sign. The structure's still there, but the sign is just damaged from years of being in the hot sun. Although it was supposed to be UV protected, it obviously wasn't. So I'll stop with that, but I just wanted you and the group to know that if you want to do something like that as a part of the training kind of thing, or even later on, you're welcome to do that. And I'd be glad to set it up on our end.
No, thank you for that, Sally. I think that's a great idea, especially since it's already been done there and the experience. One of the things that we're talking about doing was, well, it's on the agenda, was what are we going to do with these funds? And I know the Viva Connects community grants, which is coming up really quick, and I know which is something that we want to really address, which is creating and improving places for physical activity. Maybe that's something that is a part of that grant, or I think
Right.
it was social support features. So some way there's a connection where we might be
Sure.
able to figure out how to infuse that into our ask,
Sure.
which we'll talk about here in a second. But I think any way we could draw these, I guess connect these dots between each project, it's just going to be beneficial for our project and something I think we all want to do.
And I could see if I could get the names of the students from Torreon and Ojo Encino that participate. They go to high school in Cuba, and they were part of the summer programs. So maybe we could get some of them. I'd have to find them, you know. But we have signs each summer that they work on it. We put signs up with their names on it, saying thanks to them for doing it. So I as soon as you know that you might want to do that, I can start work on the Cuba end. And I'm sure that Latasha and Sheldon would love to follow me around and learn all the ins and outs of where the trails are. So let me know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would be great. Thank you, Sally, for offering that. Okay, looks like we got some visitors. Now I apologize for that miscommunication. We had people in on, I think, the Google number. So my apologies for not clarifying that ahead of time. But as I mentioned, we had wanted to, extend that invitation out to some people who have reached out to us, hopefully in collaboration of improving our trail network and trail system too. So before we begin that, because I kind of want to introduce everybody and get everybody on the same page, since we do, it looks like we have more than 5 people that joined us from when we first started. But to kind of orient everybody into this project again, for our new visitors, this is our current trail system, which we've been working on for the past 3 years and developing for the benefit of better connecting our community, but also providing opportunities of outdoor recreation to improve health outcomes, physical and mental, improve outdoor activity, recreation, and the long-term goals of tourism or of the Crown Point chapter. From that, we've spent 3 years reaching out to the community and figuring out how to develop this trail network. And what you see is the 4 trails that were identified by the community to begin improving. And we have based it off the 4 original plans. And you'll see them designated. But what we're talking about today is this section right here. Since it is on Navajo Nation tribal trust land and under the control of ODY, we spent the past 3 weeks going and figuring out how to best develop it. But as of today, this is what our trail network stands and what we've been working on for the past 3 years, as mentioned. So my name is Daniel Vandiver. I'm with the Navajo Technical University, and I've been participating on this project since the beginning. And I'll go ahead and go back to the agenda. If you're here, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself. We had Nicholas Chischuli from Navajo Nation Climate Change Program, Sylvia Billy from Special Diabetes Project, who is actually, we wouldn't have this project right now if it wasn't for her as well, since she was a early supporter of the program when we were doing our grant application through National Park Service. And then Mr. Mike Witt of the Katina Foundation. So if you're there, go ahead and introduce yourself, and I guess we could introduce the rest of our committee as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, my name is Nicholas Chischili. Toek Lini Nishla Chini Bashishin Total Koju Dash J Total Chitni Dashanella. And I am from Crown Point area, and me and Daniel coordinated after, I believe it was a Navajo Yes task force meeting. And I saw all the work that he's been doing, and us being a new program underneath Navajo Fish and Wildlife, we're trying to reach out and network and collaborate. So we're here for mostly educational outreach, and also possibly looking into some more, I guess. So what we do here is we implement our climate adaptation plan, and it was developed underneath Fish and Wildlife, and that's what our program was built on top of. So anything and everything that goes underneath that, we're here to help out, and we're also here for manual labor if needed. And we just really like what Daniel's been doing and sending out a positive message, getting kids out, and we want to be a part of that and also educate the public on climate change. Team up with Keck Community Trails. And I guess I can answer any questions if anyone has any for me. But yeah, really short introduction. Oh, we also do, like I said, educational outreach. So we go out to chapter houses, we go out to, I just got done with a grazing committee meeting, and we educate our community leaders and community members on climate change, and also trying to adapt to it and be self-sustaining in a way. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for him? I know that when we were initially talking about this, and since he is from Crown Point, one of our big concerns, and it showed up on this map that we were doing with the ODY trail, was things like runoff and erosion control. If you know Crown Point, this is basically in the middle of a water plane coming through NTU heading east this way. And 4 or 5 years ago, it got flooded out. And one of the things we wanted to do with this trail system was little interventions along these trail networks that could possibly prevent or mitigate a lot of that runoff. So even, we're talking about a rehabilitated land up here, which would require transplanting vegetation or anything along those lines. If there's any type of relevance, Nicholas, we'd like to, have you engage with our youth employment. We're wanting to use youth to help do a lot of these remediations, even hosting just presentations. We were just talking about when you guys had come in on the agenda, the summer youth programs, and how we were going to have some students for 8 hours a day, but we can't keep them outside for 8 hours of the day. So maybe do 4 hours of, transplanting, and then another 4 hours of going out there into the classroom and then learning about the larger climate impacts or how does flooding come about. So, that's a good opportunity that I think we could engage you in whenever we get our youth program going.
Absolutely. One of our goals in our adaptation plan is to host community workshops and to demonstrate things like water capture or erosion prevention and stabilization. So a lot of things like that we can definitely help present on, and also just start a dialogue on climate change, a conversation on climate change on the reservation, because I think that's really well needed right now, especially since we're in a mega drought right now and have been in a drought for a long time.
Right on. Well, if there's no other questions, one thing I do want to at least put on your radar as well is that we do want to go after transportation dollars. if you looked at the map, it's really about getting people off of the road and having them walk to Bashes or a store or to NTU to help prevent that type of stuff. So Department of Transportation dollars, Navajo Nation and US is something that we're going to be interested in going on. And if we could have some type of collaboration when we go after that, I think relates, so. Okay. We also have Sylvia Billy. I'm not sure if she's on. If not, we also do have Mr. Mike Witt.
Hey, thanks, Daniel, and good to see you, and thanks for the invite. Sorry, I mixed up the Google Meets and the Zoom invite. So yeah, my name is Mike White. I work with a private foundation called the Katina Foundation, and we're based in Colorado, but work throughout the Four Corners region and the Colorado River Basin. We've got a couple of different programs that we're building. We've been around for about 4 years now as a foundation. And we have a pretty large clean energy program, a watershed health program that works throughout the Colorado River Basin around restoration, as well as in-stream flows and working around different topics around water and water rights. And then we have a trails and youth cycling program, and that's kind of what why I got connected with Daniel. We had a good discussion last Tuesday about the trail system, and helped me get a little familiar with it. So I'm happy to join today and meet some other folks that are involved. It seems like there's some great momentum. We've worked with Navajo Yes in the past few years, as well as looking at opportunities for trail development and supporting youth cycling programs in schools and out of schools, not only across the Navajo Nation, but throughout the Southwest. And yeah, so we're just interested. I'm here to learn more about the trail system and what some of the next steps are, and what some of the exciting opportunities might be, and to think about whether or not there's a fit for us to help support the program in this great project in the future. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you attending. Before I ask if anybody has any questions, maybe we could just introduce our group really quick, and I'll just go ahead and call you out. If we want to start with the chapter, we do have Mr. Leonard Perry on. He's the vice president and one of our earliest collaborators as well. Leonard, want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Yeah, this is Leonard Perry. I'm with the Crown Point chapter. I'm the vice president there, and also the Community Land Use Planning Committee president. So I'm working with this trails because this has a personal interest to me, because of the educational, the elements of it in terms of history and culture. So I'm really interested in this project.
And he also has a lot of insight into a lot of the economic goals of the community. I know we were talking about how could this be used as an economic driver, possibly provide future employment, tying it in with historic preservation and knowledge of the area, tourism, all that kind of stuff too. So Mr. Perry.
Yeah, we're working on a tourism economic development budget package right now. This morning I had a meeting with the some bankers and the Eastern Regional Business Development Office on the hotel, and we told them about the projects we're working with, including this project, also the museum, and the Indian market. So it's to me, it's one big package.
Yeah. We also have members from UNM's Prevention Research Center. We have Sally Davis, Latasha James, and Sheldon Benali. Feel free to introduce yourselves as well. They're doing a lot of good work with the chapters of the Eastern Agency, and we're one of the chapters that they've been working with in order to help improve outdoor rec and improve health outcomes, all those types of great things.
So I'll start. My name is Sally Davis. I live in Cuba, New Mexico, and I'm at the University of New Mexico is where I work with the Prevention Research Center, and our focus is on health and improving health through being active out, and we have chosen to do outdoors because that's what New Mexico has the most of, is beautiful, wonderful spaces outdoors. And so we've been working with, as Daniel said, communities in the Eastern Agency of Navajo. And before that, we created a model in Cuba, New Mexico, which has both Navajo and Hispanic and Anglo populations, and has BLM land and forest land and private land, but mostly public land. And so we've been creating trails as a way for people to get outdoors. And we have this wonderful collaboration with Daniel and the Trails Group, which is exactly the kind of thing that we want to support. So we're funded by the CDC and also have a few small grants, very small, from the New Mexico Department of Health to increase physical activity. And Sheldon and Latasha, go for it.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheldon Benali. I am a community-based researcher for the project. Our project is called Healthy Places, Healthy People with UNM Prevention Research Center. Some of the 9 communities that we're working with currently, Crown Point is our biggest community right now. We also have Herfino, Nagizi, Counselor, Vicente, Standing Rock. We just added that the other day. Ojo Encino, Torreon, and Baca Pruitt, and Tohajali. So those are some of the communities that we're working with. So far, we're just trying to develop needs assessment. We have a needs assessment questionnaire that we've been trying to interview community members with, and we hope to move forward into logic models and also trying to work on walkability assessments within these communities. So thank you guys.
I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Latasha, and I'm also on the team for the Healthy Places, Healthy People project. And similar to what Sheldon and Sally said, we're working with 10 Eastern chapters, and we're working on improving physical activity. And we've been collaborating with the NTU Get Trails for almost a year now, and I really enjoy collaborating and talking about trail development to improve physical activity in the communities. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with everyone else. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Latasha, Sheldon, and Sally. We usually have large representation from ODY with Virginia Nelson and Jimmy Toledo, but we do have Kristen Pablo here today. I'm not sure if you'd be able to introduce yourself to the crew.
I'm not too sure if you can hear me, but my name is Kristen Pablo, the program project specialist with Office of Dene Youth. And both Jimmy and Verge are not in today, so I am representing ODY. And
We were able to hear the beginning of it, Kristen, but then it kind of faded out. Hopefully you'll be able to connect back in. But I think ODY has been really crucial to getting this going, just because a lot of what they're trying to do is really aligning with what we're doing. And I know this is an important meeting with everybody kind of coming in, because Mr. White from Katina, they focus on youth engagement. As you had heard from Nicholas, they can do presentations and engage the youth in that way too. So I think it's good for this introduction to kind of put everybody in contact with each other and figure out ways how we could align resources. So we also have, it looks like Christine Reedhead. She's a member on our group from Navajo Technical University. She's a faculty member in the business program, but then also faculty Congress president. And NTU is something we've been really wanting to align with this project for co-curricular type of activity, where we could layer what our students are learning in the classroom through the trail system. And I know Mr. White, who's talking about youth engagement and trail development, but they also have, opportunities for clean energy. And we do have an energy systems program at NTU, and Christine herself is working on a project this summer through dual credit, which is involving, I think, doing a solar car or something crazy like that. But I'll let you introduce yourself, Christine. Sorry, long introduction.
You're fine. You about got it, Daniel. But yeah, I'm Christine Reedhead. I work at NTU. I teach business. And like Daniel says, I'm faculty president and involved in a lot of projects on campus. And we've been working with Daniel in this project for the last couple years and really care about the Crown Point community and what we offer. And thank you, Daniel, for all you're doing.
Thank you, Christine. One of the things from NTU's angle as well is that they did get a grant from US Cycling to start a collegiate program in mountain biking. So we wanted to layer that into this program as well. And I think part of our pitch was not just to have a collegiate program, but really building a ecosystem around cycling that involves ODY, the chapter, tourism, adventure tourism. How do you build all of that together to build the support system? But that's something unique that's happening from NTU's side as well. We have two community members as well, Caitlin Freeland and Josh Toddy. They're also affiliated with NTU. And if you guys haven't seen Josh's TikTok station, you guys should look him up on TikTok. He gives one of the most complete info, DIY, this is how you do gardening TikTok pages I've ever seen, even providing access to how you get funding under Navajo Nation's Emergency Rescue Act, so if you've seen his page, it's really, really unique. And I think something that we could do with the youth as well. So I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Sorry. Let me start my video. Hello. My video is working. My name is Josh Tidy. I'm a student and work at NTU, and I also do, as Daniel's saying, I have a TikTok, and I share a lot of gardening on the res is my niche. So I talk about how we can garden on the res, the challenges we face with the aridity, the soil issues, how to capture rainwater, harvesting, how to channel roof runoff, and how to water. If you have to use, regular water, how to, use drip irrigation. So I got locked out of my original TikTok, but I have a new one. It's just called High Desert Gardener. So over there, I have all my gardening how-tos, and I'm happy to be here. I haven't been here in a while. Work is getting busy, but I'm here now. But I would like to be a part of it, especially with the gardening and landscaping. But that's kind of what I do. So thank you for having me.
Cool, thanks, Josh. And Caitlin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I'm also called Mary at times. I'm a student and I also work at NTU. I'm from Crown Point. Good to meet you all. Glad to be here today.
Well, we put this first on the schedule was the introductions because we really want to orient you guys into the project and get us kind of let everybody know what we're all kind of working towards. And, you see from here, youth engagement, health, protecting and helping out the environment. These all speak to this word up here, which is and we had identified, and why we kind of labeled it towards this system is because it's really about not just relations and how we were connected by blood or origin, but how are we related towards the environment? How does this trail system relate towards ourselves and how we think about the world? How does it relate to nature and animals or vegetation? Josh was really interested in landscaping and putting in natural plants that could serve purpose. I think that all kind of goes in and hopefully layers with what Nicholas is doing and what Mr. White had discussed about what his foundation does. So we're already up with our hour, but just to kind of orient everybody to talk about what we're doing. Again, my apologies for not putting out the clear information about how to access it. But what we're focusing on right now, and to kind of bring everybody up to date, we had that big over comprehensive map of what we're doing. But what we're kind of focusing on now is on a certain section of that trail, just because it's the most reasonable to get started on based on land status. So I'll email this out to the group so they could see it in depth. But 2 weeks ago, we had actually walked the trail, which is almost a mile loop outside of ODY. We made designations of things that needed to take place, such as putting in a speed table when crossing this roadway to the high school, utilizing the existing infrastructure with sidewalks, while putting up things like barriers, retaining walls to prevent sediment overflow, and then getting down here kind of into the nitty gritty. And it's really detailed. There are some opportunities for if you wanted to just learn about the environmental factors of how we're talking about doing rehabilitating the land and doing transplanting or irrigation. How do we control the flow of the water? Things like that. So I'll email this out, but this is going to be the first section that we're going to be working on. Our plan is to use summer employment through ODY and hopefully the chapter in getting this done. And I think we did have a commitment of a college student and 3 high school students through ODY, on which we're going to use our expertise and our resources to orient them and then begin providing remediation to these trails. And that'll include everything from actually how do you go in there and do surfacing, but then also how we were mentioning when possibly everybody came on, how do we take them out to Cuba and then show how things were done out there? How do we bring in presentations from Josh doing social media and documenting your trail development? Or how do you bring in Nicholas and talking about all of the cool things that he does with this program, the water capture and the stabilization. So that's what we would like to do next. On that agenda, you had saw that we were focusing on the ODY work and then the chapter. And then from that, using funds that we had applied for. So I'm going to just go over this really quick. We do have a Clean and Beautiful grant. I was hoping that Felicia would be on the call to see if they've reached out to the chapter since we applied through them. But from this Clean and Beautiful, we put in a request to do request surfacing information, which included crusher fine and natural. We had put in a request for youth employment. So after this summer, whoever we were able to work with could continue into the fall, winter, and then next spring. And then we also requested signage as well. Ones that I'd like to have a meeting again, because we're out of time right now, but there is a Viva Connects mini grant for $3,000 available right now. And it's coming up quick. I think next Friday is the deadline. So I want to meet with, again, I'm going to set a meeting on Monday for next week at 3. If you guys could attend, I would like to have more discussion on it. But from that, I wanted to revisit some of the old documents we had put together. So if we make our request about transporting students from ODY to Cuba, we could put that in the ask. I was talking about maybe the big focus of the grant was improving access to physical activity, which included trail maintenance. So we were talking about the different types of materials that would be needed and their cost. So we already kind of have this in place, which includes shovels, hammers, diggers, gloves, goggles, and here we included links, but I had sent this out to everybody as well. So on Monday, I'd like to talk about this for more information in depth, if you guys could attend at 3. We did get in the chat box that there's an update for ODY. They're giving out the applications for the college student only, which is good. That was the work job description we had sent. I'm not sure if you had received that, Kristen, which was just kind of going over the duty of the supervisor. But if so, hopefully that could help kind of lay out what that person will be working on. I know that's something that Jimmy had mentioned So keep that in mind. Mr. White, Mike White had said thank you. He included his email in there as well. So if you guys had any further questions with him, we'll definitely be in contact with them. He's mentioned that there's some opportunities for youth engagement. And like he said, he's done work for Navajo, yes. So if something like getting bikes into youth at ODY, that's something that we could pursue. So, but that's what we were most likely be asking for within that mini grant, if it's possible. So on next Monday at 3, if you guys can mark your calendar, if you can make it, that'll be great. If not, then I'll be recording it so we could go from there. The last thing I did want to mention before we get off, I'm sorry I'm keeping you a little bit longer, was that's the Outdoor Equity Fund. That due date is June 30th, and that will have to be through the chapter as well. But Felicia did send a link out. I'll share it with everybody after this meeting as well, which I think will be additional asks of what we can do. So we're getting tools and possible travel youth engagement through the Viva Connects. We have kind of the foundation of what we're going to be doing through Clean and Beautiful. The outdoor equity could be everything, filling things in between. So if we're talking about, putting in parks around a certain part of the segment, these are the things that we could venture as well. So on Monday, all we're going to do is talk about the Viva Connects grant and then this outdoor equity grant. If you guys can make that, we'll start detailing, laying out how we're going to do it. So if we get that conversation started on Monday, possibly having a rough draft of what we're going to be submitting to Viva Connects by Wednesday, and then having it submitted on Friday, I think we should be ready to go. Were there any questions on that? All right, well, cool. I appreciate everybody for being able to attend. Sorry this ran over a little bit, but you have people's contact out there. I'll be able to share it with everybody as well. Thank you, Nicholas, Mike, and hopefully if Sylvia was able to attend for attending. We'll meet next Thursday. I'll send out a meeting notice for that, and then we could go from there. So any other questions, anything anybody needs to say? Get off their chest.
Daniel,
Yes.
this is Latasha. I'll be available on Monday if you need assistance for the meeting.
Okay.
Thanks for the invite, and sorry I was late. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, no worries, Mike. That's my fault. Thank you for attending, and we'll be in touch. Okay, well, thanks, guys. I'll send out this link to everyone so you have it for your own notes, and we'll go from there. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.